Hey everybody, today I am going to be reviewing Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. This was directed by Christopher McQuarrie. This is apparently the final Mission Impossible film in the franchise, and I guess this is the second part to Dead Reckoning Part 1, which came out in 2023. I reviewed that film at the time, so you know where to look for that one if you want my opinion. And I think I've reviewed all of the McQuarrie entries for Mission Impossible with the exception of Fallout, sadly. But when it comes to Fallout, I think that one reaches the absolute pinnacle so far as showcasing the stunts, the action sequences, and, the big set pieces. The film itself overall is a little bit thin for my taste narratively, but as I always say, when it comes to Mission Impossible, we're not going for like the plotting or the exposition necessarily. And so many sequences in that film stand out to me and you remember them. I think about just like the dive off the plane with Henry Cavill in that film. And it's like we end up on a roof and then from there we go into this club sequence. So it's like you've got the music and the lights and the colors. And then we go into this bathroom, where we have this bare knuckle fight. It's the flow from sequence to sequence like that I think is just so on point. And then you look at sequences like that bathroom fight sequence, as I mentioned. It has the spirit of a movie like The Raid 2. I mean, it's not as good as The Raid 2, but again, it's pushing in that direction, and I feel that, and I respect it. That chase sequence through Paris, oh my God, you don't want to know how many times I have seen that. It is executed so well. It's only like a minute and a half or something like that, but it's like just nonstop, moment to moment, cinematic adrenaline. I look at Dead Reckoning, though, which comes out after, and while the stunts are maybe not as dazzling or as show-stopping as they are in Fallout, weirdly, I think that Dead Reckoning finds this great sweet spot. I think it's maybe the most well-balanced of the McQuarrie entries just because we have a more meaty story to kind of enrich a lot of those action sequences, yet it still felt old school, like a big brassy blockbuster film should, in my opinion. So I had some hope for this one because even when maybe I don't love a Mission Impossible entry, I think they are very solid films. They stay consistent, so you can count on them being at least entertaining on a basic level. But man, this one, Final Reckoning, it is such a drop-off. I was shocked actually by how anticlimactic this whole final entry felt, how poorly edited it is, and just how instinctually everything just feels off from the moment that the movie started. And I'm not sure what happened here, and I'm confused. Just looking at this overall, as of now, gotta revisit maybe the second one, but I think this is probably the worst one in the series by far. Not only does this not feel like a Mission Impossible film, but it barely feels like a film to begin with, because so little is holding this thing together. It is so lopsided and so weighted down by exposition that it, to me at least, it deflates the entire experience from beginning to end nearly. I'm thinking usually with a Mission Impossible film, you want a big statement opening. That's going to be your exclamation point, and it's going to, attempt to suck the audience in before we cool down, and then we can have some of the exposition. And to me, it's like this movie starts out and you see the Paramount sign and you hear the conga drums and you're like, ooh, this is gonna be exciting. I can't wait. Zippy fun, let's buckle up. But no, those conga drums lead us into this long lectury monologue by Angela Bassett, where she is essentially likening Tom Cruise to like Superman at this point. He's no longer just a symbol of like American nostalgia and wholesomeness as this final movie star. No, he has transcended that mythos. He is our last hope to bring the country together, don't you know? It goes on, and we're constantly padded with all of these flashbacks from other Mission Impossible movies, and it all just feels like it's a medley, like a bad medley of greatest hits. Instantly, I thought, okay, so it seems like we're going to have some serious pacing issues if the rest of the film is going to be like that. It's just not a good way to start things. Mission Impossible is meant to be cheeky and silly and fun, and the exposition should be over the top, but it's gotta be self-aware. But this film is so self-serious so far as its messaging is concerned that it kind of starts to wander into self-parody. They think they can get away with scene after scene after scene of exposition, all running together, and it's just the same derivative stuff. And they just kind of pepper it every once in a while with some grins and some eye raises. It's like they think if we cut back to Tom Cruise constantly while he's grinning, it will reassure the audience that this is still a Mission Impossible film. But no, to me, this film is completely drained of all the personality and the charm that is behind a lot of those winks and those smiles and those eyebrow raises. The whole crew here just feels tired and over it, and Ethan as a character feels like an afterthought in his own movie. And like I said, so much of the exposition, it's the same talking points over and over again. So it's a lot of conversations where we're like, it's up to you, Ethan, only you. And there's just, like a lot, especially in the first act, there's a lot of holding up the MacGuffin, like we didn't do that, multiple times before in the previous scene. This film feels like it's going entirely in the wrong direction, and it feels almost like it's kind of drunkenly stumbling over itself. When I look at Dead Reckoning, the part before this one, to me the weakest points of it were, when we get more into the entity, the antagonistic force. Obviously, it's a big, clumsy metaphor for AI, but again, I think Mission Impossible is at its best when it's not dwelling too hard on anything that is complex. I think keep it tight, slick, and fun, and simple. That's how I see it. But Final Reckoning instead decides to nosedive right into all of the entity stuff, the antagonistic stuff, and try to open it up and relate it to the modern world in the most ridiculous way. It's just far too complicated for a franchise like this to be taking on, and so I think they should have known better. But what's so interesting to me is that when you look at both parts and you look at Dead Reckoning, part one of the story, and you realize, no, that was supposed to be the beginning of the end. So it's like that was supposed to be all of the exposition. And again, I am baffled because Final Reckoning has so much more exposition than the previous one ever had. It is so heavy on talking. It is so boring. Final Reckoning to me should be, the release of all that tension. It should be the big, fireworks. It's incredible how much this film is lacking in tactile energy, and that was always something that I loved about it, is that they didn't rely on like CGI or anything like that. So many of the stunts were real. But also I think with this one, trying to connect all of the Mission Impossible films and bring it full circle, I just didn't think any of that was necessary. Again, it's Mission Impossible. All we really need are some fun stunts, some beautiful locations, and some clever banter to kind of, thread it all together. To me, there should be no excuse, especially when you consider how much of a control freak Tom Cruise is and how he has built kind of this whole, like, very cleverly curated, insulated system, with Macquarie where he can be more hands-on. And Cruise is known for being the kind of person that goes above and beyond to be sure that he is delivering that entertainment value to the audience. He cares a lot about how the audience feels. I guess you could argue that the movie is trying to build very slowly, and it's purposely short on like humor and short on a lot of the stunts and action sequences, perhaps to, again, prepare us for that big climax at the end of this movie, because that is the real fireworks. And I will say the 5 to 10 minute climax where Cruise is fighting the villain, yeah, it felt proper. It's the only time in the entire movie where I felt like I was actually watching a Mission Impossible movie and seeing Tom Cruise, strutting out in that like Indiana Jones cosplay practically, surfing on that plane again like he is Buster Keaton. There is a feeling of like liberation, and it's dizzying, but it's also like you have all this anxiety as you're watching it. It's fantastic. But at the same time, I almost feel insulted that the movie felt the need to drag the runtime this long. The movie is almost 3 hours long just for that little flourish spectacle at the end. It's great, and yes, it is a high bar, but I don't think it's, the greatest Mission Impossible stunt I've seen, and when you consider some of the other ones, it feels maybe a little bit uninspired. Still very strong, but no, this movie to me felt like I was sitting through a long, like 3-hour college lecture, and I'm just so bored, I'm falling asleep. And then suddenly it's like the fire alarm goes off, and it's like, oh, awesome. It's like now suddenly I'm getting the feeling, the excitement that I want, but it's like, no, that is not how a narrative works, especially when it comes to these formulaic blockbuster movies. But like I said, this barely feels like a film to me. It kind of has Rise of Skywalker energy, not that disastrous or anything, but just in the feeling that it's slapped together. To be so dead just for everything to be jarring at the very end, this just was not at all what I was expecting. And maybe I should have been concerned, because even the marketing for this one feels maybe a little bit last minute, especially when you considered, like the Rome premiere and all of that for Dead Reckoning. I don't know what happened here, if there was miscommunication, but something just went south, and because of it, the entire franchise ends on a whimper. I don't think you should waste your time on this. 10 minutes of good stuff at the very end of a movie to me is not enough to withstand nearly 3 hours of the most banal attempt at tension building. But yeah, major disappointment. But that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commission portraits and I sell prints of my work. If that's something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are great. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Welcome to all the new members. If you're interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.